The Sydney doctor who travelled to Syria in an effort to repatriate a group of ISIS brides and their children to Australia has now admitted he has no idea if they're radicalised because he barely knows them. In fact, Dr Jamal Rifi, a close friend and supporter of Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke, said, quote, "If I saw them on the street, I wouldn't recognise them." Well, isn't that comforting? Speaking from Lebanon, he told the Daily Telegraph's James O'Doherty that he'd been communicating with the women and children since 2019 when they cold called him for medical advice and aid. He's been talking to them via smuggled mobile phones since then. And despite saying he didn't really know them, even after 7 or so years, Dr Rifi said he paid application fees for the children, aged 7 to 12. According to him, they mustn't pose a threat, otherwise they wouldn't have been issued Australian passports that he took to Syria for them. The women and children tried to leave Al Roj refugee camp on Monday to plan their way back to Australia, but they were turned back by Syrian authorities. I mean, this is just extraordinary. What on earth is Dr Rifi playing at? Trying to bring back a bunch of women who abandoned this country, turned their back on us, backs I should say, and have children with Islamist terrorists when he barely knows them and doesn't have a clue, by his own admission, what they or their children are now thinking. And I get it, it is bloody hard on these children. It's not their fault who their mothers and fathers are. But that doesn't mean it's our responsibility to harbour them. They may be Australian citizens by birth, but as far as I'm concerned, their mothers as good as revoked their citizenships when they went and joined a terror group that fought against us. It's sad, and, you know, what I'm saying might be hard, but the priority must be to protect Australia. And I'm sure you've seen this footage of a journalist being pelted with rocks by children in another of these Syrian refugee camps.
The longer we stayed, the more aggressive the children became.
Here come the stones. All right, we're going to move to another area.
As we left, they made sure we got the message.
If that's what these women and children are living amongst, why would we risk bringing that here? Dr Rifi should frankly be ashamed of himself. I'm surprised, to be perfectly honest. Dr Rifi has long been seen as a positive leader in the Muslim community and a voice for moderate Islam. He's previously spoken about the importance of tackling radical Islam and stopping young men from falling prey to it. That story was in The Australian in 2014. And for that, he received death threats. At the time, he said one radical is one radical too many. You'd think of all people, someone who's received death threats for speaking out about radical Islam would know the danger here. And despite believing that one radical is too many, he now wants to bring potential radicals into the country. To discuss this further, joining me now, Adjunct Fellow with the IPA and former Deputy Secretary for Strategy in the Defence Department, Peter Jennings. Peter, thank you for being with me. I can't get over that we're sitting here talking about trying to bring these women back, and the man fundamentally who has done the most work to make it happen says, well, I don't actually know if they're radicalised. If we don't know if they're still radical or not, why would we take the risk?
Well, we shouldn't be taking the risk, and I feel also that Dr Rifi should, given his connections to government, maybe our intelligence services should have warned him off this course of action, because it seems pretty clear that we're talking about people who are at risk of radicalisation in those camps. Those camps have been long known as hotbeds of radicalisation. We've heard that a number of the females are said still to be radicalised. And I just make the point, Caleb, we keep talking about children, but I can tell you that 12 and 13-year-olds, early teens, they were often the recruits that IS used for using explosive vests to go into markets to kill people in Syria and Iraq when IS was at its height. So this is an age group which is often vulnerable to radicalisation. And that's why we see Hamas in Gaza, for example, very closely focused on educating kids well below their teens. It's because they're susceptible to being radicalised. So in the absence of having an assurity that that's not the case, that has not happened to these children or their mothers, we should not be allowing them back into the country because I think, frankly, the risk is too great. And we're talking about a group of people for whom radicalisation is a known factor.
What do you make of this argument that Dr. Rifi and some others have run this week, which is that we should bring them back to Australia so that they can potentially be tried for crimes and feel the full force of the law under Australian law?
So for the women, I think that has to happen. But a question to ask is, well, has that happened to the women that have already been brought back by the Albanese government? Where are they in terms of the legal process? Because they broke the law, travelling into an area which was excluded by Australian law from Australians travelling overseas, in order to become associated with one of the worst terror groups that we've seen in this century and before. So obviously, if they come back to Australia, absolutely they should be tried. But then I think beyond the legal issues, Caleb, is the risk issues.
Yeah.
And I just want to make the point that IS clearly has a following in Australia. We know that from a number of recent events. So there's a group of people that are disposed ideologically to support them. They're also in those refugee camps in Syria. To play the card that it's poor little innocent children doesn't necessarily go to the reality of how young people radicalise and how Islamic State has used children, early teens, as part of their strategy for killing people during the course of the time of the caliphate. Caution is necessary.
100%. Peter Jennings, thank you so much for joining me tonight.